I was joking with first service because I came in so grumpy this morning. And I was like, and then David played that, and I was like, golly, I am just like, it was just pretty funny. And hearing it again, I was like, actually, I am in such a better mood. That first service, yeah, it improved a lot. Sometimes it happens, you know? Yeah, like it was like being in church with you. It's almost like when I'm left alone with my head, sometimes no bueno, right? But then we do church together, and I'm like, oh, life is pretty good. So, community, it's amazing, it's healing. So, announcements. If you want to have fun and you don't want to be a grouch, it's true. You can come to the RE Carnival, yay, that will happen in the parking lot and playground on May 21st from 3 to 5. Please come. It will be fun. You will have a great time. And it will set you up. It will fill you with joy so that the next day, on May 22nd, when you come to the congregational meeting, you will be carried with such a vision of joy and wonder and awe that you will decide to participate and vote on all of the many important things that we will have going on for the next year. So please come to the congregational meeting. Immediately after the service on May 22nd, it will also be streamed live so you can vote from home. Don't worry. We have, as you've heard, on May 19th, a summer forum sneak peek. Rick Okabe, who's a third-generation Japanese-American, whose parents, grandparents, and aunt and uncle were interned in camps, the Japanese internment camps at World War II, will be coming to speak about Topaz, which is the Japanese internment camp that was here in Utah. So please come and do that. Come to learn. And the rest are in the torch. So, it's kind of an odd Mother's Day invocation opening words, but this is where my mind was at today. I found it in all great places. Facebook, the source of deep spiritual offering. But it really kind of captured where I was at this week. And maybe some of you. I am pro Nina, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of my business. None of our business. I am pro Jada, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of our business. I am pro little Kathy, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of our business. I am pro Melissa, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of our business. I'm pro Maria, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of our business. I am pro Kimmy, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of our business. I am pro Jamie, whose reasons for ending his pregnancy are none of our business. I am pro Vanessa, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of our business. I'm pro Lindsay, whose reasons for ending their pregnancy are none of our business. I am pro Imani, whose reasons for ending her pregnancy are none of our business. You can argue and say that I am pro-choice all you want, but the truth is abortion is health care. And you need to mind your own business. This is perhaps a peculiar reading to share on Mother's Day. But as I'm sure you are aware, a draft of the Supreme Court decision was leaked this week, indicating that 5 justices are in favor of ending the constitutional protection of abortion in this nation. In their confirmation hearings, each one of these justices said that Roe was established law, meaning they lied to Congress. Liars. Perhaps not surprising, as the politics of the right have a tenuous grasp of integrity at best. But this is still frightening and enraging. And while we don't yet know what this will mean in practice, we have reason to suspect that many states, including this one, women will lose access to safe abortion care. This is often framed as a battle over reproductive rights, which it is, but it is also a battle over the control of women's bodies and the control of women. And without a doubt, we will hear numerous references to Mother's Day as they try to convince us that this is not the case. But this battle is led by the forces that do not believe women have the right to agency and self-determination. They offer up Mother's Day as emblematic of the highest expectations they have for women. While not exclusively religious, there are many misogynists among us who are not religious. Much of this assault on a woman's right to choose motherhood on her own terms has come from religious communities that kneel before a patriarchal idol they call God because it conforms to their own prejudices and moral failures. A woman's reason for ending her pregnancy are none of our business, but ensuring that you have agency and self-determination is. Your choice to become a mother is yours and yours alone, and this church stands with you without reservation. I will call my mother today and thank her for being my mother, because she is a great mother. And being a mother is something she's really proud of and has enjoyed doing. But I'm also going to thank her for teaching me what it is like to be a man and the values that she brought me up with. I remember very vividly she ran her own business, which was in the trade. She did construction, and so she had to deal with all of these guys that thought they knew better than she did, which was infuriating to her. But she did very well for herself. But I remember very vividly sitting down in her office one day, and she had this little list of things that every woman needs. And I remember so clearly, I don't remember the whole list, but very clearly, it must have been because of the emphasis she put on it. She's like, a woman needs her own money. And I was like, yeah. This church and Unitarian Universalism believes in women, believes in equality, believes in human beings. And we are here for you in whatever way you need. Oh, yeah.
Light the chalice.
Oh. Team effort.
Do you hear, oh my friend, in the place where you stand, through the skies
We find the roots of Mother's Day embedded within our Unitarian history. A Mother's Day proclamation began with Julia Ward Howe, a writer, lyricist, mother, woman of faith. She lived in an unhappy, abusive marriage that she was unable to leave for a myriad of reasons. Her marriage was so abusive, in fact, that her minister, James Freeman Clark, encouraged her to join him, along with her small children, to view the front lines of battle during the Civil War, to have a reprieve from her husband and write. War was safer for her. After watching the bloodshed of boys, not that terribly older than her own, she wrote the battle hymn of the Republic. Seeing the destruction of the Civil and Franco-Prussian wars, she saw the path through this bloodshed led by women. Women to call for peace, for justice. Her calls for peace included a day set aside for mothers to rise against war and oppression, a Mother's Day. Julia saw that this would not be possible, however, while the rights of women were tied to the men they were married to. As a parent, she had no way to keep her children safe, her boys from war, her daughters from unsafe marriages, while she herself had no rights under the government. That is still the question for all parents everywhere. How can I keep my children safe while I am living under my own shackles of oppression? Women have gained the right to vote that Julia fought so valiantly for, but there is so much else holding us back. Our earth is dying. Capitalism crushes everyone without billions of dollars. Children are dying, not feeling like they are able to live their authentic selves. And this week, we learned that women may not have the autonomy over their own reproductive choices again. Julia's path through to try to create a world where her children could live in freedom was with peace. Julia's peace, however, did not come quietly. Julia was noisy. She wrote, spoke anywhere that would give her a platform or a pulpit, demanded seats at tables where decisions were being made, and if she was not allowed in, created her own tables to commune with others to solve the problems. Our path as parents must be the same. We must gather together to recognize that to create a world safe for our children, we must commune together. We cannot solve these problems independently because they are interconnected to each other. Our world is not filled with isolated people, isolated events, isolated problems. Our recognition of our connection is necessary to gain power needed to create the world we want for our children. Our Unitarian Universalist faith asks us to see our interconnected world with wonder and awe. We see that awe in the faces of our children who look like our parents, who look like the children in homes that have been flooded by rising waters, faces covered in blood and dirt from war, whose eyes look like that child that took their own life, and that child, and that child, and that child. The eyes of all our children staring back at us with their first wondrous breath. We must speak out for all of them. May it be so.
This morning, I looked at my plate, heaped with vegetables and topped with an egg, and I offered up a prayer of gratitude for all the forces that brought my breakfast to me. The broccoli, the green onion, the zucchini, the chard and kale and spinach, all these were planted by someone, nourished by the sun and the rain and the soil. The egg with its bright orange yolk was a gift from a chicken, obviously fed on fresh greens and bugs pecked out of the ground, who was tended by someone. Much of this food came from close by, grown by my husband and his friends, planted and tended with love, and brought home on the back of Jim's bike. Some of it came from far away, was picked and packed by laborers, driven by a trucker, on roads built and paved by workers, received and set out by a grocer and sold to me by a cashier. When I think about how everything is connected to everything else, the sun providing energy for life, the weather breaking large rocks into mineral-rich soil that nourishes the plants, which nourish animals, how the water cycle moves water from the oceans to soil and back again, I'm awed by the exquisite perfection of it all. It's the perfectly designed system, this diverse riot of climates and habitats and species that comprise our home supports us in amazing homeostasis. The creation, whether the result of a big bang or made in 6 days by a divine craftsman, is nothing if it is not a miracle. But I wonder if there's a critical design flaw in this system. The impending destruction of our habitat suggests something is amiss. We humans have come to believe we are somehow separate from the natural world, that we can own and use the rest of creation however we please, for profit, to satisfy our greed, and to dominate others. We mine and burn and consume, ravishing the earth, spewing toxins and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, poisoning our rivers and lakes. Hunter-gatherers burned fallen wood or dung to generate heat and cook. Today, massive extractive industries profit from pilfering the planet. I hate these corporate despoilers, and Jim and I are determined not to support them. We've divested our investments of any fossil fuels. We limit the plastic that comes into our house and reuse what does come in until it can't be used anymore. We raise much of our own fruit and vegetables, drive an electric vehicle powered, at least in part, by the solar panels on our roof. We buy in bulk to avoid excess packaging. We wear our clothes until they disintegrate, washing them in cold water and hanging them to dry. And then we buy new clothes at the DI. Despite all these efforts to limit our carbon footprint, I'm still complicit in supporting these corporate polluters. Their mining of minerals and heavy metals supplies the chips and batteries in my electronic devices. They supply the raw materials of my home and car. Their fossil fuels keep me warm in the winter and my house lit at night. And they fuel my air travel. They supply the synthetic fibers from which my athletic clothes are woven. It's hard to be human today, at least here in this wealthy country, and live in a way that leaves the planet better off rather than worse off for having been here. I suppose the fail-safe is built right into the system that went awry in the first place. If we humans render our only home uninhabitable, we go extinct. The earth, then, without the pressure of human overpopulation and overconsumption, will repair itself. The scientists say it could take 1,000 years after we stop putting carbon into the atmosphere for ocean temperatures to fall to pre-industrial levels. But they will. Still, I can imagine a happier scenario. In fact, spring, with its abundance of life exploding in every direction, inspires a more hopeful view. On my morning walk, lost in conversation with my neighbor, I was suddenly struck dumb as we approached a stand of trees where a multitude of birds sang a symphony of songs in perfect harmony. Before I even registered the sound, I felt my heart swell and the edges of my mouth turn up in a smile. And later on that same walk, we passed a tree in flower and were overcome by the sweet scent. I don't know about you, but when I experience such moments, my first impulse is to share them. Do you smell that tree? Do you hear those birds? I imagine a world where by sharing these moments of sublime communion with the earth, we invite, perhaps infect each other with a greater awareness of our place in the creation. We inspire one another to revere the living essence of the rest of the creation as equal expressions of the divine, rather than as objects only to be used and discarded. Of course, we still need to consume the earth's bounty. To be sure, all of us, humans, plants, and animals, must consume to live. Tigers wouldn't keep their stripes if they didn't hunt and eat the antelope and water buffalo. And the broccoli I so enjoy wouldn't grow if it didn't consume water and minerals from the soil or use the sun's energy for photosynthesis. But these consumers take only what they need, and nothing is wasted. Even the tiger's leftovers get eaten by the jackals and vultures. And what doesn't get eaten biodegrades and returns to the soil to nourish the grasses. From a position of love, reverence, even worship of the only planet we will ever call home, I imagine a more communal life where we share resources to eliminate waste. Co-housing communities already practice this, sharing meals, chores, and resources so that residents don't each need to have all their own stuff. Jim and I are down to one car between us, but even that spends a great deal of time in the garage, and it could be shared among a larger community. How many neighbors need to have their own snowblowers and lawnmowers? With awe and reverence for the world just outside our doors, we could strangle the consumer market that keeps the corporations extracting and burning and polluting our home. If we see ourselves as instruments of an ongoing creation, on a par with the rest of the world, we might replace our hunger to consume more, bigger, better stuff by satisfying our need for meaning and deep connection. What is more meaningful than collaborating to support the continuous rebirth of creation? When you leave this morning, listen for the birds, smell the flowers, give thanks and honor our Mother Earth on this Mother's Day and every day she sustains us.
So Martin Luther, you ready for this? We're going in. We're doing Germans. No, Martin Luther, when he was making his break from the Catholic Church and talking about the power, right, that the priests had, became famous for this line, there's a priesthood of all believers, meaning that you don't need an intermediary to encounter God, to behave in priestly ways with your peers. A few hundred years later, James Luther Adams, the Unitarian minister and theologian, sort of riffed on that term, and he said there is a prophethood and a priesthood of all believers. Right? That not only do we have this innate ability to be pastoral with one another, but also that we have the prophetic power as well to call into being a better world. The prophets are not just certain people ordained into this role, but each of us has the prophetic power. And we're in a time when we need to cultivate both our prophetic and priestly powers. Right? When I think about what a church is supposed to do, it's not really to be a performance space, right? It is a place where we come to be transformed, me included, right? I came this morning grumpy Grumpelstiltskins. I was so grumpy. And in the encounter that we had at the 9 o'clock service, something changed in me, right? There was a vision of a different world that became available because I moved out of my head and into our encounter, right, of what the world can be. And the world is asking something of us. It is not to be passive. It is to be prophetic, and it is to be priestly. To offer both the call to change and transform, and to help and heal and save, and to sit with and empathize and hug and love and adore. That's the purpose of church. We're going to send around a collection plate. When it comes, right? When it comes by and you are putting money in, or maybe you're, doing the photo thing with the QR code, like whichever way it happens, right? Take a moment to say, why are you here? What are you being transformed into? Who are you helping to transform? Like, it's not a performance place. It is a space to be transformed and to transform others, because the world needs what we have, the prophets and the priests that are sitting all amongst us, right? Thank you for your offering. It's funny, that's actually one of my favorite moments in the service when we do that. So I sort of imagine myself like those preachers that do the Slade in the Spirit, where they're like, wah! And like all the people fall over. But of course they're all like, props, because they're like, that doesn't really actually happen. But then I do this and everybody rises, and it's just, anyways. The little things that keep me amused while I'm up here. Anyways, Dennis Dutton, a philosopher at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, has written extensively on the evolutionary elements of beauty. That is, on the idea that concepts of beauty are hardwired into our genetic makeup, with the point being that beauty is not just in the eye of the beholder, nor just part of our culturally determined environment, which reflects our biases. Dutton suggests that beauty as an experience has grown and developed within us as part of our evolutionary development from long before we even had speech to describe an experience of beauty. As an example, he gives the wide-ranging use of a repeating image found in paintings. Dutton writes, "Consider briefly an important source of aesthetic pleasure, the magnetic pull of beautiful landscapes. People in very different cultures all over the world tend to like a particular type of landscape, a landscape that just happens to be similar to the Pleistocene savannas where we evolved. The landscape shows up today on calendars, postcards, and the design of golf courses, public parks, in gold-framed pictures that hang in living rooms from New York to New Zealand. It's kind of a Hudson River School landscape featuring open spaces of low grasses interspersed with copses of trees. The trees, by the way, are often preferred if they fork near the ground. That is to say, if they're trees you could scramble up if you were in a fix. The landscape shows the presence of water directly in view or evidence of water in a bluish distance, indications of animal or bird life, as well as diverse greenery, and finally, a path, or perhaps a riverbank or shoreline that extends into the distance, almost inviting you to follow it. This type of landscape is regarded as beautiful even by people in countries that don't have it. The ideal savanna landscape is one of the clearest examples where human beings everywhere find beauty in a similar visual experience. And I know this landscape well. I can see it in my mind. I suppose in my context, I've been particularly influenced by Andrew Wyeth, who for many of us from New England, the sort of seacoast area of New England, consider to have captured our environs so well. But it looks kind of like this. And it's peculiar when I was reading this because my upbringing was really much more about pine forests. I grew up in the forest, not in an open field. There are areas that approximate the savanna in New England, but it's hardly natural. The savanna areas, savanna-type areas are cultivated. They're landscaped. I grew up in the forest. And when I was growing up, there was this controversy that happened in a town right next to mine, because there was a certain farm that ran the length of a well-traveled stretch of road that was up for sale. The farmer had decided to sell it, and the town purchased it because it wanted to keep the landscape intact. It's a beautiful landscape with a sort of rolling hill, and there's this perfectly perched wagon right on the top in the horizon. And culturally, it was very important for the town to keep this image for us simply because it was beautiful. But why was it beautiful? What did it represent? There are not many farmers left in New Hampshire, and most of us have no real connection to farming. My family has been in New Hampshire since 1623. I'm the 12th generation born in New Hampshire, which is why I fled. My mom tried to get out, but she got pulled. She's like the Godfather. They're like, they keep pulling me back in. She tried. She went as far as New York. And then her mom found her a job. She's like, oh, this is great. She got back. Anyways, neither my mom nor my grandparents can tell you anything about farming in this state. Right? Even though we've been there that long, we're not farmers. And I don't think that this image struck us as beautiful because it told us anything about ourselves or even our immediate past as people from New Hampshire or anything in particular. We just see it as beautiful, and it's beautiful. There's something particularly inspiring about that stretch of the road. So inspiring that the town paid $3 million for it back in the 1980s, which, today is, you probably get like a garage down in South Jordan for $3 million. But back in the 80s, that was some money. And to watch it be sold or turned into housing or industry would have been a loss. We all knew this. Even the people who didn't agree with spending so much money, and it was a lot of money for a town of 10,000. But why do we find it so beautiful? Why do thousands of tourists who drive through the state each year seek it out? As Google says there are 65,000 internet references to Wagon Hill Farm, which stretches less than half a mile on the road from Portsmouth to Durham. Right? Could it be that there is something primal about it? Could it be that it reminds us not of New England, but oddly of Africa, right? Where our minds began to experience emotions and feelings related to what we were seeing? When we witness something beautiful, there is an experience of gratitude. When Jessica was talking about the smell from the tree and the immediate desire to share it, it's like, oh my God, you just feel good. You want to share because you enjoy, you are feeling grateful. And we use words like awe to indicate something that is beyond the limits of language. Or words like breathtaking, because we are left so struck that even the primal drive to stay alive is suspended. Photographer Louis Schwartzberg comments, when people see my images, a lot of times they say, "Oh my God." Have you ever wondered what that meant? The O means it caught your attention, makes you present, makes you mindful. The my means it connects you with something deep inside your soul, and it creates a gateway for your inner voice to rise up and to be heard. And God is that personal journey we all want to be on, to be inspired, to feel like we are connected to a universe that celebrates life. The experience of beauty is sacred. It is a sacred act that in many ways we cannot manufacture for ourselves. It comes to us as a gift from other places, gives to us, and we, more often than not, respond with a silent thank you. And this happens with landscapes. This happens with dance performances. Some people see it in elegant math problems. They just sit there and, oh my God, this is so amazing. I don't understand any of it, but they do, right? Beauty. I don't know at what evolutionary stage beauty became part of our experience of the sacred or our experience of gratitude. I'm fairly certain that worms don't experience beauty, or at least not in the way that we do. But it sometimes seems like a dog can gaze out over a mountaintop, just taking it all in, perhaps hearing the soft echo of the pack that she ran with millions of years ago. And then there's us, right? A species obsessed with beauty. Obsessed. So at some point it evolved for us as an experience. And perhaps it is life that wants to feel beauty. Perhaps we are the vehicle for life to see itself, to be in awe of itself, to fall in love with itself, with its own majesty. I believe that life is curious about itself. The God concept is not an omniscient, all-knowing God that lives apart from us. I don't understand that one. But what if God was curious about itself? Not all-knowing, but curious. Sitting there with the question, what am I? What is this? We talk about those questions when I do a lot of spiritual discernment with folks, and they're like, what am I? And I'm like, that's not even your question. Like, we all have that question. If we all share that question, it's actually one level down from this ego space, right? It is a deeper question. It's not just a spiritual question that crosses generations. It is a cosmic question. It is the question of a curious God. What am I? NASA has this popular website called Astronomy Picture of the Day, where they display fascinating images of the celestial realm. It's the homepage on my computer. I've probably had it there for about 15 years. And I just love to open my browser and see what they're showing for the day. And it's these very often, more often than not, sometimes they're science things, but more often than not, they're these pictures of these far-off galaxies that, they have no real intention to be beautiful, not like a painter has an intention to create something beautiful. But I find it absolutely stunning. They don't follow rules of any aesthetic school. There's no real symmetry or sense of composition or any intention towards truth. They do not follow color theory, but the galaxies astound. Is their beauty mere accident, or do they, like landscapes, resonate with us because they remind us of where we come from? Could our memory be so innate that the story of our origin exists in the atom? When we look at these galaxies and remark on their beauty, do we not somehow experience gratitude? We are alive to witness to life. But beauty, when it comes to other human beings, can be complicated. We all feel anxiety around beauty, which can be, it can feel unfair. The experience of beauty does determine the passing on of our genetic material. There is a calculation of worth that is inscribed in the concept. And it's not just for us. Other species do this as well. The fabulous plumage of that iconic crest of the peacock train is, pretty astounding. Especially if you've ever seen one in person, they're stunning. It does not add any protection. It really weighs that thing down. But it does attract the peahen. She looks at that and she sees something, right? And chooses her mate based on it. But maybe there's another path into beauty, right? Dennis Dutton speaks about the thousands of Acheulean hand axes that were unearthed in Asia and Europe and Africa. And we found so many of these axes that they could not actually have been used for butchering animals or setting up houses. Some show no marks of ever being used. They seem to have been made just for the craft of it. Like the peacock's train, these axes show a mate that the craftsman has intelligence and fine motor control and planning ability and conscientiousness and perhaps access to rare materials. And they were made by our cousin, Homo erectus, who did not have language. But here was something that we could hold out to one another. And it told a story in its beauty. Our craft made us desirable. And I went on, I have this thing about musicians here, but then actually I remember when Jessica came up and told her story, I actually thought about Jim going out and foraging in the yard and coming back with a basket full of shard and food and holding it out to Jessica. And I was like, that's exactly the same, right? Beauty. She's like, that's my man right there. Coming in with breakfast. I love it, right? He's a craftsman, if you know him. He's a craftsman of how to grow things. It's beautiful what he does. We identify with something particular, and there's something special and primal. I remember so well the professor that I fell in love with, Janet Chiazzo. She was not very symmetrical in her face or anything like that, but she was so smart. Holy cow, I would sit in the front row because I was in LOVE, right? Loved her. She was so beautiful to me. Maybe some of you have had that experience. But it does become a complicated issue when we are seen only for our physical beauty, when that's our main value and virtue, partly because we're not really seeing the person in front of us. This is one of the real problems with Instagram, right? That it creates so much anxiety and trauma in people is because we're just cycling through something that is actually quite superficial. We don't actually see what's there. Anais Nin is famous for saying, "We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are," which leaves a particular indictment of beauty on the table, the grasping we make for beautiful things, be they people or objects. Sometimes it can make us look quite ugly. Right? But for those of us who seek the spiritual experience, who seek the sacred, beauty can also be a great guide. And during my last year in Brooklyn, I began a meditation practice on a very busy subway platform, the Bedford stop in Williamsburg, if any of you are familiar with that area. And tens of thousands of people commute into the city each morning through that area. And it gets so crowded that sometimes people have to wait for 2, and if you're not particularly aggressive, even 3 trains to get on. It's a very stressful experience. And I worked in the neighborhood, and I was working as a minister, which, right, we only work on Sundays. So I had lots of time. That's a joke. We work all the time. We do not just work on Sundays. I don't know where you guys get that idea. It's not true. But I didn't have to work between 8 and 9. And so, I honestly kind of felt bad for these people because it was tough. Like, they were doing everything they could not to see one another so that it didn't matter if they pushed each other to get on the train, right? So I made this sign that it was like a big poster board, and it said, "May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be loved, may you have purpose." And initially nobody, because everybody's in a rush, they didn't read the sign, so they tried to give me money, right? And I was like, I don't need the money. I'm just here to help you have a better day. And so what I did, I got a pink top hat and a pink lei. And then people are like, "What are you doing here?" And then they would read the sign. And I was like, just say this to everyone on the train in your mind, and your train trip will be so much better. You'll have a better day. And then I started getting high fives, and people would see me all the time. It's a riff, that sort of mantra is a riff on the metta meditation. And over the course of that year, I spent maybe 100 hours down there, right, just greeting people from 8 to 9, a few days a week. And one of the most striking aspects of the morning meditation was the experience of realizing how beautiful everyone was. Everyone is. And I was reminded of this passage that I'd read years earlier in Betty Edwards' drawing on the right side of the brain, where she writes, "Faces are fascinating. Once you have drawn a person, you will really have seen that individual's face." And as one of my students said, I don't think I ever actually looked at anyone's face before I started drawing. Now the oddest thing is that everyone looks beautiful to me. Why would this be? Why, when we actually take the time to look into the face of another human being and we get beyond the easy elements of what makes a person attractive to us, why do we get overwhelmed by a sense of beauty? We're not looking for craft. I was not stunned by the professionalism of these subway riders. If anything, the opposite. But there was something in their faces and in the practice of actually looking at their faces that filled me with happiness. This is actually what happened to me in the first service. I came in like, wow, 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 wow. And then I got to sit here, and because of the form, it looks like it goes one way, but it doesn't go one way, right? there are right now, I don't know how many of you are. How many are there here? 100 people? 12, I don't, what, how, let's say 100. There are 100 sermons coming back at me. This is an exchange that we're in. And I could not stay grumpy no matter how much I wanted to stay there, right? Because of the beauty of the encounter. You know, most of these people, when I was on the subway, they did not look like my mother. They did not look like my father. They did not remind me of any childhood attachment. But there was this incredible story behind each of them, a story that I will never know, a story of their ancestors, a story of all the intentional and chance actions that brought them in front of my eyes. And I had the opportunity to witness to it. I thought I was going there to cheer them up, but really it was a gift to me. The only thing I had to do was open my eyes and to see them. These people came from across the country. They came from across the generations, from the ancestral savannas of Africa. They came from across the eons, from the distant galaxies to face me. And they were so incredibly beautiful. I left that underground space each morning smiling because I saw people. And today is not just another day in your life. Everyone you meet, everyone your eyes bless, everyone you experience as a presence is a gift to you. And you are a gift to them. The beauty of these encounters is the feeling of the sacred. And the only real response is gratitude. Beauty is calling out to you from all around you. It is part of you. Feel the curiosity of God, the cosmic desire to witness, to be in awe of, to fall in love with. If we do nothing but cultivate our ability to see beauty, the very beauty of our existence, we will have lived amazing lives. Please go out, see the beauty. Perhaps, begin by exploring it in a space that does not feel so beautiful. Right? Head down to State Street. Because that's not a beautiful place. Take a moment of practice and find the beauty there. It is healing to bring the sacred into all of our acts. And at some point, we will see things as they are because they will be as we are. Amen.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Source of life, God, my darling, inspire us as we walk out into the world, into the seas of people, waiting to be seen and witnessed for how beautiful they are. Not because they did something special or because they look a certain way, but because they are overflowing with worth and dignity simply because they exist. Awaken us to that deep interwoven presence as beyond the fences and the names and the parties and the ideologies, beyond even birth and death, where we just rest in the oneness of life. And fill us with grace so that we might find the courage to be the prophet and the priest that this world needs, not because we are right, but because we are led and guided by beauty and love and awe. Go in peace. Amen.